Hello, good morning. Yes, my scientific interest is in leadership, relationships, decision making. So my angle on this issue is on the urban governance. And I have posed this question, how to brace urban governance for this kind of climate crisis that we have already happening. Building on a lot of things that Esteban said, many topics really resonate here, and maybe on an operational level, because what I'm going to talk about is based on a series of experiments that we did in Finland. I was involved in the team that were centered in Helsinki, but we had other teams working in Kotka and in Tampere. Took several years, and hopefully through these experiments I'm able to provide one answer to this question, how to prepare. But to start with, do you know what this is? Probably most of you do. This is the dashboard of Tallinn. It combines a lot of information, real-time data, and if I'm not mistaken, in terms of strategic planning, it is used for only one thing: to look at where to put kindergartens. So it is underused in terms of strategic planning. And we know that despite of this knowledge and this data that we have, we are still on that kind of, somewhere there, 3-degree warming is going to happen. So the crisis that Esteban was talking about, that we are talking about, that we have to be resilient against, they are in many ways our own doing. And we are still doing strategic planning that is either totally oblivious to this fact or very optimistic of our capabilities of dealing with this. At the same time, though, we are now living in this time that many of us call polycrisis, right? So, from empirical experience, since many years already, we have seen them all. As I said, most of them our own doing, but nevertheless, this is the World Economic Forum's mapping of the crisis, the interlapping risks and crises that are ready to attack us. And polycrisis means that there are 3 or more crises. And we see that this is becoming the new normal, that we don't have a stable situation, then a crisis happens, then we do something, and then we restore the old situation, the status quo. But nevertheless, this kind of crisis situation over the years has become really on the picture. And if we see where the funding goes, what we talk about in smart city forums, this is about risk management and how to deal with this kind of different types of crises. And the increase, what I'd like to call, or what we called in our program, sandbag mentality. Sandbag mentality is this kind of way, that whatever happens, we'll just put more sandbags, and then we wait until it's over. And this might not be the case, right? But when we come back to the governance question, then why is it so that we have on one hand this kind of a sandbag, preparedness, operational risk thinking, and on the other hand this kind of strategic long-term planning, and they are not interacting with each other? So we found very clear 4 challenges that this kind of governance, why this is so. Well, obvious is that we have the separation of these 2 ways of thinking. And it is quite clear that it made sense when the crises were sparse, when they didn't happen very often. But now, as we are in this kind of overlapping crisis, we have this kind of a very long-term crisis going on that is really hard to predict, and at the same time it kind of erupts in different ways. It doesn't make sense anymore, like this kind of 2 ways of thinking. And when we talk about this kind of a climate crisis or long-term crisis, then you know how it goes. It is very hard to detect what is going on, what is going to happen. You know the phrase, boiling the frog, right? How to boil a frog. Well, you boil the frog to turn on the heat just so little that it doesn't jump out of the kettle, right? That's what's happening right now. The signs of climate change is, well, are they there? I don't know. It was really cold this winter. And that leads to the very widespread problem in many fields that we have just a very strict division of labor. We have the department that deals with sandbags, and then we have another department that deals with strategy, right? This is so in Tallinn, but in many cities all over the world. And that means that we're actually creating boundaries between those who can speak about different kinds of data, different kinds of knowledge, different kinds of input to the system. And it's very hard to get this input to the table at the same time. You know, you might have earthquake experts, but do the earthquake experts really talk to the crime experts, if you come back to the Esteban's Tijuana example? So in our experience, we were starting to think then, is there a way to overcome this? Do we find actually governance models? Can we think about governance models that can help us in bringing these two sides, the strategic planning and this operational planning, back together? And when we were looking for answers, we discovered that, well, there actually is already a type of governance for this. And it is called high reliability governance or high reliability management. And I think that we're kind of all aware of this. This is the type of management and governance that is exercised in critical infrastructure. So we have nuclear power plants, electricity grids, water systems, or even aircraft carriers, airborne, you know, all that is happening in the flight tower. This is all organized on the principles of high reliability management. And this is exactly what they are doing. These kind of problems are what they are directly addressing in this kind of framework. And how do they do it? Well, there are 5 principles. First, these kind of infrastructures are the ones that where failure is non-option. It is non-negotiable. So if we're talking about urban resilience, then it's like, oh, well, we get a little bit of flooding. We'll live with that. Maybe 30,000 people will lose homes. Well, what you gonna do? But when we think about nuclear accidents or, you know, aircraft carrier sinking, well, we don't really calculate the risk. It must never happen, never, because the cost is just too high. It is basically incalculable. So therefore, this kind of a motivation drives the whole management logic. You don't simplify, you don't look for easy answers. If there are weak signals, we want to know where the weak signals are. Therefore, this type of management is very sensitive to operational input. What's going on right now? How are the machines working? If you know why the 3-mile accident happened in the United States, one of the most scariest nuclear accident happened. Why it happened? Because one valve that was reading the temperature or pressure of one pipe was malfunctioning. They had just one input signals that they didn't pay attention to that led to a catastrophe, or at least near catastrophe. And so the whole idea is that you need to have this kind of a real-time operational expertise of those who take care of the small, everyday details of our lives or the lives of these systems. Grid operators, engineers in the machine room, those who think about weather patterns, all these kind of different types of expertise, they all come together, and in a material form, in these pictures you see how it happens. This is the operations room. This is the way this kind of information comes together. And there, as I said, you know, the operational attention is big. Then these people there, they don't care so much about their hierarchies. Someone is a director, someone is an engineer. Well, if the engineer has key information about what is going to happen in the future to this system, it must be accounted for right now, right away. So, obvious solution that we did in Helsinki and other cities was that, well, let's take the operations room and put it in the urban context. And so what we created was a policy operations room. Looks really boring, doesn't it? Right, it does. There's just a bunch of people around sitting and talking about the city resilience. But what we did was that we really tried to think about how to bring this information that we have in the high reliability management and in the cities, how to bring that into the operations room. And so what we did is we created an artificial dashboard because we wanted to test the strategic planning of the city in terms of future events, right? So in our team, we had the Finnish Meteorological Institute who created a synthetic weather event. Synthetic weather event, they patented it, it's now a term, they published on it. Synthetic weather event is that you take a catastrophic weather that has already happened and you put it in a new location. In our case, we took the 2011 Copenhagen rainfall, major rainfall. It has its own Wikipedia page, hundreds of millions in damage, and we put it in Helsinki. And then, because we are dealing with a polycrisis, not just one event, we were describing in this dashboard a series of events, a series of the future situation where this kind of crisis just overlap. So we had a heat wave all summer long in the year, I think in our narrative 2030. A heat wave all summer long. Then we had this rainfall, forest fires. Of course, if you have a heat wave, all the fires in Russia are burning and the wind carries it to Helsinki, so the Vanda airport has to shut down and so on. And and then the catastrophic storm rain happens, and this is what it looked like. It's just a small part of what we showed to the decision makers. This is what the central Helsinki looks like after the rainfall. If you've been to Helsinki, it's sort of a bowl. It fills up. The sewer there is built in 1800 something. It doesn't. But what happens there? Metro lines passing through Helsinki, right? So a lot of flooding. And this is what it will look like in our animation. Because what we realized is that it is not enough if you just show these dots or graphs on the dashboard, because people have not been used to reading them, especially if you take experts from different fields. You have GIS people, they look at the map, it's like, oh, it's terrible. And then the other one who's never seen a map or doesn't care about it says like, what? What are you talking about? So we had to create an emotional, easily understandable, and emotionally cognitive information onto this. So to make it really emotionally catchy, we did a third layer. We created a fake news reel, which shows that after this kind of a polar crisis have hit, this become a new normal. This is how it is going to be talked about in the news. Because what politicians care about? Yeah, they might care about crime. They might care about earthquakes, but what they really care about is getting back into the office. So what happens to real people? How do they read the situation? How is it conveyed in the media? I'm not going to show the video, unfortunately, because I think we infringe some copyright rules. But these are the ones that I can show you. So it was a couple of minute long newsreel fake thing. We used actors to play people who are affected by this kind of a polar crisis. And so after we showed them this, we showed them what we call a strategic threat architecture. Because we are not interested so much in this sandbag thing, but what we're interested is how the strategies of Helsinki city respond or react to this crisis situation. And all of them individually taken might be really good. You know, we're doing responsible financing. We are doing sustainable transport. But if we put that under the stress test of this polar crisis, then we wanted to show the conflicts, the discrepancies between these different strategies, to really push the decision makers to think that when they are doing strategic planning in the condition of overlapping crisis, do you need to modify the city-urban strategies, or the urban strategies. And I like to think that we succeeded. Because we did, of course, post-pre interviews, we analyzed how the policy operations room took place, and we really saw that the narrative in the discussions was changing. So in the first meeting, we allowed experts to propose what should be done with this flooding. They proposed that we would have either some kind of a distributed nature-based quick solution, but then we need to do this kind of long-term investments, but the new sewer costs $1 billion. So, and you need to dig up whole central Helsinki. But then after discussions, the decision makers understood that, well, we can do a little bit of that, and we need to do this kind of adaptive monitoring of the situation, do small steps that don't overwhelm them, think strategically about how to prepare for this kind of future situation. Right. So we saw that because the city civil servants were involved, it was normatively integrated. Because we had discussions between the experts who are usually silent when politicians talk, the high-level civil servants and the political leaders, they were really talking to each other. And we saw that it was really important to create this contagion, that it was really happen. You know, in psychology, the term is contagion when you think that there is a tiger outside the room, and then your hair turns up on your back of the neck. This is contagion. It's imaginary, but it makes you act. This is what we wanted to create, a contagion of the future crisis. So I had a question in the beginning, how to brace urban governance for climate crisis. And I think that the answer is that you need to do this kind of exercises all the time, at least once a year, to stress test the strategic plans of the city. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. We also take Slido questions again. So, yeah, there's one question for you here. I guess it was for you. Why do local governments do not integrate data in decision making? An example with Tallinn dashboard and kindergartens. I'm not quite sure what it's meant about dashboard. I guess it might be the city page, I guess, or?
Well, usually people are very proud in saying that we are doing data-based planning and strategies. Well, quite easy answer is that besides data, we have other kinds of data as well. We have emotional, political, other types of strategic reasons that people are reluctant to do it. But from my perspective, this kind of governance perspective is that, well, we're not living in an age where there is too little data. We are living in an age where there is too much data. We don't know how to integrate it. We have experts in different fields. They're talking different language. How to make sense of it. In every field, we have economists speaking one language, sociologists, transport planners, ecologists. They are how to integrate all this knowledge into actionable, how to integrate this data into actionable knowledge. Maybe that's the right way of putting it. Maybe that is one way of answering this.
Okay, also another practical question here. Have you done such tests for Tallinn or Tartu as well?
I would love to.
But what's
I have talked about this to the strategy office of Tallinn, and they were positive. I haven't talked to Tartu specifically about this, but we did a small scale, or I did a small scale intervention in. Oops, did I press something? No, okay. Did a small scale similar project in the municipalities of Harju County. So Harjumaa Omavalitsuste Liit, in rural areas or sort of rural municipalities. And it was, we didn't have that much money. We didn't have the money to hire actors to do the fake news reel. But the other principles to make experts talk to each other, to imagine what is the worst case scenario and try to bring this to the table, that really provided very interesting insights. For example, if you're in a rural municipality in Estonia, what turned out that one of, like just an example of what can happen, is that when the climate change happens, right? It's not that it is extreme cold or extreme warm, or even that the forests catch fire. You know, that's kind of old news, right? But one of the things that they really were worried about is that the temperature that hovers around 0 degrees. It freezes at night and it thaws during the day. This is what we have had in Estonia for the last 5 years, I guess. This was exceptional winter. And why is it important? Is that, well, in Estonia, the studded tires for heavy vehicles is not mandatory. Yeah? So if you have fire trucks, garbage trucks, school buses, you have constant ice for four months in a row. That really messes up your transport. It really messes up your ability to react to urgent crises, or even just to function as a city. And it is really expensive to buy these studded tires for the buses, for all of them, make it mandatory. So to think about, maybe we should have just like one spare set for to change quickly if we have something, or something similar, at least to bring this kind of a quite separate knowledge, separate domain. Like how do we get people to school if this kind of a climate crisis goes on? So I think that the municipalities were ready to think about these kind of things and to see that it has value for them. And I hope that this word kind of distributes and we'll have more of those experiments.
We can take also from the public. Yeah, gentleman over there.
Thank you. If you would be the next mayor of Tallinn, so how would you would like to be re-elected?
Peter was a candidate, not a mayor's candidate, but in the local elections.
The question follows.
Yes, sir.
And you would like to be re-elected?
Yes.
So how would you provide great urban governance in Tallinn in long-term perspective?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that two ways of answering this. First is that if people see that crises are systemically addressed in this long-term way, that it is not just that, oh, we have a crisis, we never thought about it, and if their lives are not significantly changed, or at least there is some kind of response to that, it helps to give legitimacy to this kind of planning, right? This is one way. But the other thing that I think we kind of learned when we did this is that, and this is a critique of our own work, we really didn't involve communities as much as we could have. We had experts, many types of experts, but I think that a way of improving legitimacy and getting re-elected is to bring these kind of decisions to local level, as Esteban was saying. Really not think about the city as a whole, but think about concrete communities. How do they live? How do they react? What is the problem that they see? How different types of crises, long-term crises, how it affects them? I mean, if we have gas prices, I mean, I'm just making up this right now, but if we have gas prices that are going up and people struggle buying gas to commute every day, and it is winter, well, maybe you think about putting studded tires on your bike, as I do. I hope this does the trick.
Thank you very much indeed, Peter. Again, there are more questions than we have time to answer for, but if you're staying here, maybe people can chat with you over the lunch. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.